Hi, and welcome to another episode of GovCast. I'm T. Dow. Today we'll be talking to Mike Wallace and John Reel from the City of Tulsa, Oklahoma fleet. We'll be discussing the city's 2021 ransomware incident, how the fleet operation handled it, and what they've learned from the experience. But before we start, remember to connect with us on social media. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss future episodes of GovCast. You can also find these episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you'd like to listen on the go. And now here is my conversation with Mike and John. All right, can you first briefly tell us the timeline of what happened and how your team found out about it?
Sure. So the city of Tulsa experienced a ransomware attack about the first week of May of 2021. So for us, we came in like it was going to be a normal Monday morning in fleet, and we discovered that we had no FMIS system, we had no phones, we had no printers, we had no internet, we had no Wi-Fi, no email. So basically, it was like back to the Stone Age. We started from kind of regrouping, figuring out how things would go. And of course, this wasn't just fleet. This was citywide. So all of the customers we support, they were all dealing with the same thing at the same time. So it kind of, obviously bringing vehicles in for your scheduled PM wasn't a priority. We weren't seeing things come in, which was probably a good thing because we were trying to figure out how you roll forward without having the resources that you've been used to up to this point. So that's kind of how it started off as far as figuring out, not knowing any type of time frame for resolution, how you continue to communicate both with all of our locations, with customers, and how you go about providing services.
Okay, and let's talk about how it affected operations. Like so much fleet data is computerized, as you mentioned, and if you don't have access to that, that's very disruptive. Can you talk about the changes that you had to make to your operation during this time?
Yeah, so fortunately we had we broke out the old 3-part carbon copy work orders from ages ago, and that's where some of the senior guys got to show old technology to new guys. They're used to everything being on computers, and we went back to handwritten work orders where you tear a part off and you give it the parts, and the service writer keeps a part, the mechanic has a part. So we started out that way, developed a workflow process where everybody knew what would happen, how we were fortunate to have storekeepers who knew their parts room because they have no ability to look up inventories or know what they had. They just knew what was on the shelf, and systems of trying to make sure you get the right part. We relied on our vendors. Everybody goes back to their cell phone because the first thing you did was picked up your desk phone and tried to call somebody and realized the phone doesn't work. So it's good knowing people's phone numbers, knowing who to reach out to. Not having access to vehicle histories, or when you came back in on Monday, picking up where you were on a repair. Those were all the challenges that we had to work through kind of getting started off. But the guys adapted really well. We were lucky to have a team who was really able to pull things together in a hurry. One of the biggest effects was vehicle diagnostics. Now everything's internet driven. It's all based off of Wi-Fi with scanners and computers that do your diagnostics. And not having that, I'll let John kind of pick up on that part of it about what we had to do to build a MiFi system and get that going.
Yeah, part of, to just kind of elaborate a little bit on what Mike said, in addition to our own fleet maintenance software, we also lost our fuel system in the event, fuel tracking. So we had, just like the old carbon company, we had to stick clipboards with notepads out on our fuel islands and had, we turned the pumps on and relied on everyone that was obtaining fuel to write down what their unit number was and what type of fuel they got and the quantity they got. And at the end of each day, we had one person that went around to all the fuel islands and collected them, and they brought them back to us. And we had to track our fuel that way on manual pieces of paper. getting some functionality back up, we managed to obtain some, they're like whole home Wi-Fi devices that allowed multiple users to connect to them. And one of the advantages that we had going into this is that all of our technicians had devices that are called Chrome bits, which are little Chrome devices that were not connected to our city network. So as long as they could get on a Wi-Fi connection, they could access the sites they needed to access. So we brought these, we brought Wi-Fi devices out into the shop, and we had people using their own phones as hotspots, and all the little tricks of the trade that we pulled out to whatever we had to do to get people online in a way so they could access the sites they needed.
And you're talking about diagnostics.
Diagnostic, yeah, all the stuff that our guys need to fix the vehicles. Yeah.
How long did it take before it was resolved, and what happens after?
So of course the city had to build a network from the ground up, and fleet wasn't obviously the first priority when you're dealing with the safety and security and convenience of citizens. So we were on that list, but it took a little while. We were down for about 2 months total. So it happened to coordinate with the end of our fiscal year. So not only did we have the situation of needing to get systems back up and have things going, but it also was the need to close out our fiscal year, which meant we had to get nearly 2,000, actually nearly 3,000 work orders entered into the system, completed, closed, and charged out within about a 2-week time frame. We had to enter 15,000 fuel transactions. So we even looked at trying to bring in temps because we had about a week to do that. And by the time you train people to work a system that they're not familiar with, and to get that data in, realized temps wouldn't really work. We had to utilize our own resources, kind of work a lot of overtime and train people to pull within our own resources around the group. So it was quite a bit of an effort to get all that
back
done.
up and running in July.
Right. Yeah, we had everything ready to go by the start of the new fiscal year on July 1st.
I think this is something that'll be hopefully beneficial to our listeners. What have you done, or what can other fleets do to prepare for something like this happening in the future?
One thing I've done is I've taken knowledge that don't take for granted that data is going to be there. When you leave on Friday, don't take for granted that information is still going to be there on Monday. So what I've started doing is, at the end of every single month, I've got our FMIS system automatically running reports of things that we would have found useful if we'd had during the ransomware attack. Things like just a complete list of everything that's due on all vehicles, a complete inventory report of all the parts in all of our shops, a work order export, all of the existing work orders, so that if this were to ever happen again, all we'd have to do is go back to the last time, and those reports run and they automatically go to our email. Our email now is all web-based, so as long as we can get online, we can access these reports. So things that we didn't have then, we would have now. If it happens again, we'll have a list of all the vehicles and what's due on them, and we'll have inventory reports for all of our various locations, and we'll have all the information and all the vehicles all at one time, and all the work order statuses of all the vehicles all at one time. So just putting things in place to prepare for it to happen and being ready when it does happen.
And these reports, it's just a one-time setup?
Yeah, it's a one-time setup. I've got them set up, and they basically run the last day of the month. So when we come in on the 1st, they're all sitting right there. And yeah, they're just automatic reports that run with all the various information that we wanted to have but didn't have access to when we needed it. So
Any other tips?
No, out of this process, I think most fleets, you have a disaster recovery plan if you have a flood, or you have a disaster recovery plan that you go out and pull out if you have a tornado, or a lot of natural disasters. We had one for a pandemic. How you deal with that. We never had reached the point where what if we had a ransomware, but now we have one. We know what you have to do, and that's something that I wouldn't want any of the other fleet community to ever have to face for having to go through that. It was quite an interesting 2 months to go through.
I think that is all the questions I have for today. Thank you both for your time. I do want to hear from our viewers, so let us know down in the comments how you're preparing for or have dealt with hacking incidents. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of GovCast, and we'll see you next time.